Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics. I'm joined today with Mick Mulroy. Mick, how you doing?
I'm doing good coming to you from Washington, D.C., where National Mall, and I can see all the National Guard soldiers out there. There's a lot of them uh, walking around guarding those monuments.
Yeah, Mick's working on Labor Day too, Labor Day weekend too, guys. By the way, he doesn't stop working. A lot
If
happening.
that's something
Yeah,
to brag about or
I don't know. Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, I don't know if you do brag about it or not.
not.
A lot happening as usual. We have the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is holding a summit in China with a ton of countries. There's like 20 plus countries. You know, Turkey, who's a NATO member, being among them. But you have China, Belarus, India, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. There's a ton more, all meeting now, unlike this week in China. A lot of the headlines you've seen there have been like, you know, Putin coming, you know, visiting, and like pictures of Putin and Xi like bear hugging each other. What do you make of this?
So it is significant. I mean, starting with Russia and China, the relationship with no limits, I think they call it. I'm sure you can make some jokes from that, but
Yeah,
the the U.S. has tried, especially during the Cold War, to keep this Sino-Soviet, at least at the time, split. Right? I think that was a phrase that we all used because we don't want two of the biggest countries geographically and population. Well, China, Russia isn't population-wise. We'll get to that, but geographically, to be completely aligned. It's not in our interest.
yeah,
We like to keep them split, and that's not the case now. And I'm not quite sure what we're doing to try to drive any kind of wedge in between the two, but we should be. And then the other, which got a lot of headlines, is the two most populous nations. So it was the Modi Xi meeting where it looks like they're actually becoming closer together. That's not in our interest. I mean, India is the biggest democracy in the world. Um, they have issues with China. There is a massive trade imbalance in India's benefit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I have a massive trade imbalance with Irish pubs around the world, and it works out for both of us, right?
yeah, yeah.
Just because you buy more stuff from them doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Is my
Sure.
point, right? But they've had border disputes and all that, but they're coming closer together, and part of that, I think, people are going to question whether the tariff policies, which has kind of been blanketed around the world, are going to push traditional allies of the United States closer to adversaries of the United States, whether it's India or Canada, right? I think the verdict is still out, but these are indications that it might have done that. And I think that is going to be the questions that the administration will get is this really what you want to do? Why wouldn't we, address China if we're going to do economic policy by pairing with our partners, which then gives us a lot more leverage on China. By blanketing it and not distinguishing friend from foe, you could have a negative effect. I know it's bringing a lot of funds into the to the U.S. government, according to economists paid primarily by the consumer, Americans. But this another issue when it has to do with foreign policy is the potential that we basically start creating alignments with countries based on their need to, push back against our economic policies.
Yeah,
Question's still out there, but I think that's an issue we're looking at.
yeah. And I mean, I've had a former CIA officer, Louis Rita, on, who's was chief of station in New Delhi, and you know he's got a real grasp on what goes on with India, and
Absolutely.
he pretty much states that like India is an ally for sure, but like they're kind of out for themselves, right? Like they get a ton of weapons from Russia. They really are like a non-alignment kind of country or whatever, and it's interesting. Like, yeah, we're doing everything we can to kind of push them towards China and Russia too, because I'm sure they're still buying oil from Russia, right? As is
Right.
China.
Well,
Uh,
that's another topic, right? If we
yeah,
and you know, if we just throw in tariffs and sanctions, it's kind of like the same thing, but the sanctions aren't high enough to get them to stop buying Russian
right,
oil, then what's the point,
right.
right? Then it just is just
Besides
part of
like
the
lip
tariff policy.
service, yeah,
That's just part of the tariff policy. It just means they're paying more tariffs, right? If it's punitive in the sense that you buy oil, you know, it'll be harder to sell to us, then it could have an effect. But that's not, at least nothing I've seen indicates that they are buying less oil or stop buying energy from Russia based
yeah.
on the current.
Also, one country that always stands out. I don't know. I have like a sore spot for this country just because, like Pakistan, because frankly, like they were supposed to be our partner in the global war on terror, especially with Afghanistan. And, the ISI had elements in it, or still does have elements in it, that are less than aligned with U.S. kind of terrorism policy, right?
So
Yeah, so like I always see Pakistan, and it always gives me like a little bit of like a chill in the back of my neck. Like they're such scumbags. They take our foreign and military aid, right? So, and for 20 years they hosted in the tribal areas Taliban, Al Qaeda, and Bin Laden was found, in their comparable to their West Point, where a mile away from like their military academy. So I see, especially Pakistan, right? Like it gives me I'm sure for you it gives you the irks because you actually fucking worked there and did this for as your career. Um,
and apparently, Modi was upset the way the negotiations went with the U.S. involvement with the flare up with Pakistan.
yeah,
I don't know exactly the details, but that's something I've heard from several people who are more more knowledgeable on this relationship. Certainly the current relationship, and that has driven a wedge between us and India, right? And and potentially even the personal relationship between the leaders. I don't know how. I think that you can see it, so it's probably
sure.
accurate. But that's another aspect of the growing distance between the U.S. and India, which isn't a good thing. I mean, we
No,
want you always want to keep your allies, right? We fight as coalitions, right? We
right,
always fight as coalitions. Not that we're looking to fight China, right? But you want to have the strongest allies in uh, the unfortunate event that there's actually a confrontation between the U.S. and China. We want as many allies uh, and fewer allies to India or neutral parties, especially if they come to our side, right?
yeah.
In any capacity. So we have to keep that in mind when it comes to all of our relationships and all our actions, I think.
So you think there was some ruffled feathers, I guess, when they negotiated the ceasefire or whatever,
That's what the word is.
yeah,
Yes. I don't know why. I don't know what the US did. So I'm not taking a side. It's
sure,
just it's been said to me that there was by people I trust. No,
right. We're like are in the know and are probably dealing with this, or at least at minimum at the periphery of this, what's going on. Uh, Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, there's probably an entire episode about like how the U.S. has navigated the Pakistani Indian rivalry for the last 40 years. Uh, so anything else on the China summit that you want to hit on?
I mean, I know we have a lot to discuss today, but
Sure,
I think maybe it's something that because it's still going on, and like you said, it's pretty big, and
it's
there's
huge.
countries that are NATO allies,
Turkey, yeah. I mean,
right?
and I think there's who else? There's another one. I believe Armenia. Is Armenia a NATO ally? Sorry, put you on the spot. Whatever.
I don't think so.
At least Turkey. Turkey's a
Now
massive
I have to
NATO.
find out.
Uh, yeah, the fact that Turkey's there is interesting. I mean, Erdogan does a really good job of like threading the needle on
No, it's
being
not.
no,
That's
okay.
right. Yeah.
Sorry everybody, we don't know the NATO countries by heart. Apologies. But Turkey does like it's super. They dabbled with getting the S-400s. That's why we cut them off the
Yes.
F-35 and stuff like
Yes.
that. So there's like a history there of like kind of doing their own thing a
I
little
don't know
bit.
why anybody would want the S-400. I mean, if anything is proven, is that most
Yeah,
of these Russian systems aren't. I mean, look at Iran. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're
If
right.
it's a false sense of security.
It's interesting because like over before this went down, like with Iran and stuff like that, where you saw like the S-300 and I don't know if they have 400s yet, but whatever have like gotten to the test of like fifth generation fighters and probably even fourth plus generation fighters. Before that, it always seemed like yeah, the S-300 and 400 are like unbeatable like air defense systems, and it really does not seem like that's the case. Yeah. Maybe it gets like fourth gen stuff and like non anti radiation missiles and stuff like that, but like we've found a way around them. So yeah, Erdogan is a weird guy. Like how he operates, kind of plays every side. I feel like especially foreign policy wise, like his foreign policy. Yeah,
I mean, part of that is, and you could argue whether the current administration is really disengaging and being the isolationist or actually significantly engaged. You can argue the way, but regardless of that, the more you retract from being the leader of the world, under any administration, the more the free world feels like they are on their own, right?
yeah,
So, and they start making their own alignments, and not that they don't, if we're very forceful leader of the world, but they're going to do it more if we're not willing to stay in that role and really work with our allies. And so that's both, the topic we had on economic policy, but also on security policy. And countries start realigning and looking for alternatives if we're not there. Something to keep in mind. It's a choice, and if we choose to withdraw from that role, I'm not saying we are, but if we do, um, there's serious consequences.
yeah. I mean, you hear the rhetoric about us withdrawing from it, but it seems to be more and more like kind of ambiguous and opaque. It's like, are we pulling away? Are we not? And it seems to go like different. It seems to like vary country to country too. Um, so there's a super like just muddy vision of what's going to happen in the future in terms of like U.S. foreign policy and where we are. Because, like you said, if we leave and we step back completely, like there's a massive vacuum, and like just seeing the amount of countries that are going to the summit, it's pretty clear that like China's kind of at least trying to like you know how China is. They're weird, right? But they don't really seem to take a huge interest in major global like
The
foreign
policy
stuff.
is to stay out of it,
Yeah,
basically. They don't like getting involved in conflicts. They just look at everything as economic opportunities,
yeah.
um, where they, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad strategy, but um, yeah, and they keep growing, and they're bringing people into their sphere, their
Yeah.
orbit, and that's people being countries, and that's something we should keep in mind.
I mean, remember earlier this year too when the tariffs were released, the rumors of tariffs were like spinning everywhere, like how like Japan and South Korea and China were like kind of probably talking about like dealing with the
Yeah,
tariffs
that's a good
together, which
example,
is like you wouldn't believe that if like somebody told
right?
you like Japan, South Korea, and China are buddying up on something against the U.S. Like
That's a good
it's pretty
example.
surreal.
Dee.
Yeah. Because I'm sure, like, for that to get out, like, they must have had some preliminary conversations, like, right? Like, there's no way that's like just somebody's assistant or whoever, right? Like, hit up the other person's deputy or whatever, and like they were like, "Hey, what do you think of this?"
Yeah, and these
So,
tariffs are getting challenged right now. There's some appeals
yeah,
courts, and it's not my bailiwick, but they do have an impact on foreign. They're major foreign policy impacts. I mean, economics is what drives most, and security is basically to shore up our economic interests. But whether these continue or not, I guess is going to be decided, at least a majority of them, decided by the Supreme Court here.
Yeah, well, that's good to see. Like, the checks and balances are working, are trying to work. Also, tariffs are making things more expensive for us too. Like for the U.S. consumer as well. Obviously, we don't talk about like domestic stuff that much, but at the end of the day, it's like a tax on just everybody.
It is. I mean,
Yeah,
if the cost is going up and the country of origin isn't paying for it, then somebody is.
yeah,
It's going to
right,
be eaten by the. I mean, this is what every economist I think is saying. Eventually,
right,
it's going to be paid by the consumer because
yeah,
companies can't exist if their entire profit margin is gone. I mean, what's the point of
sure,
being a company, right?
right,
So they're going to
yeah,
have to pass it on, and you know, I guess the flip side, you can say, well, if it goes to the national debt, at least we're paying as a country down the national debt. It's a tax. It's a
mm-hmm,
tax to the national debt. I just don't know that it is.
right,
Is it
yeah.
earmarked to go to the national debt? I don't think so.
Unlikely. I mean, we've been running deficits the last couple months that are pretty astronomical, like 300 billion a month U.S. national deficit, not debt. So that's kind of like holy smokes, like where's the money going? Like, do we get anything from it? Right? Like, do we get affordable health care or something that like benefits the entire country and is pro business? I would argue, but continue.
I was at a conference. I don't know if you call it a conference, but it was about all national security stuff. Somebody asked a very well-known politician, like, what are we going to do about our national debt? And his answer was, we're going to sell Camp Pendleton. I was like, what? And we were all military people. So like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, you sell Camp Pendleton, you can pay off the national debt. And I was like, huh, yeah, but then what are you going to do with the 1st Marine Division, right? So, I mean,
So like
I don't,
privatize it?
yeah, that was his, and I think he was serious. But it's like, that's the
How is that?
plan. That's the plan. It seems like a bad plan. It seems like, again, I'm not an economist, so I don't want to dive too deep, but it kind of intermixed with, obviously security and defense, right? When
Yeah.
you're talking about selling one of our biggest military bases, in the United States. I think obviously he was saying that because it's in Southern California where the land's very expensive. But I think we have to have a better plan than that.
Yeah, man.
Not an
Yeah.
economist, but
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that that's not the plan that Americans want to hear, is mass sell-off.
To who? Like private companies?
Yeah, he's saying private companies and to develop it to sell as real estate. We
Good
didn't go
God.
much detail after that because that wasn't what the summer was about. But I remember everybody leaving going,
Huh?
"Oh man, is that actually the plan?"
And it's
Selling off like Yellowstone Park? I don't know.
it is a prominent politician.
He was out of office by then. And
okay.
it wasn't. Yeah, I'm not going to use his name.
No, it's fine.
It's not fair. But he was a prominent, I think, very respected. I don't even know if he agreed with it, but that's what he said. The behind the scenes plan was just mass sell off federal property.
Will that cover even $37 trillion? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, buddy. Somebody's
You have
going
to
to
sell the moon
do the
to
math.
cover. Yeah.
I don't know. The farther we get away from it, we'd have to sell everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, I don't know. Oh yeah, we got here for tariffs. Okay. All right. So that's the China Sun. We'll keep an eye on that for sure. See who's who's flirting with each other and playing footsie under the table there. I'm sure the CIA is all over that. I'm assuming. Like who's really like getting buddy there. Moving on to Ukraine. There was some talk, ceasefire. The ceasefire talks and peace talks seem to kind of cool down. Unfortunately, we talked about it last week where, Russia's kind of reneging on everything they even maybe mentioned of doing. Absolutely no way for Western troops to be there. So I don't know what an Article 5 like security guarantee looks like in Russia's eyes. The one thing we were talking about is the possibility of like U.S. contractors being deployed to Ukraine, which, I don't know how that would work, but maybe you can give me some insight on what's going on there.
Right. So the coalition of the willing, 31 countries right now, are willing to deploy their forces in the event of a ceasefire into Ukraine. I think that's absolutely essential. Russia, of course, doesn't want it, but that's tough, right? Russia wants something where Ukraine essentially would set them up in the future to be able to restart the war.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they can't do that if, I've heard upwards of 60,000 troops from European countries coming in there to do this peacekeeping. So they can't just start the war whenever they feel like it's at their advantage.
Also, they want Ukraine to demilitarize too. So it's just come in whenever you guys want. There's no real deterrent whatsoever.
Right. So the Ukraine demilitarizes, and there's nothing between, the static lines and Kyiv. Right.
It's crazy.
Okay. It's time for the U.S. just to say that's just nonsense. Just call it out for what it is. Right. And I know you asked specifically about contractors. It's time for the U.S. to impose significant consequences. We said we were going to do it. It's time to do it. But there is this concept, in addition to this coalition of the willing, of a buffer zone, so that there will be this buffer between the two front lines, or between the two opposing sides, the Ukraine and Russia, of course. And that's where they'll patrol. Right? So you get between them, which I understand the concept. President Zelensky's not too keen on the concept, one, because there already is, I think, something like that. But essentially, we got to remember, this is all Ukraine, right?
Yeah, right.
It's all Ukraine.
Yeah.
So are they going to make the buffer like back into Ukraine?
Right.
Right. So ultimately, like all this stuff, it needs to be approved by the Ukrainians. We shouldn't be imposing, giving up territory, even with a buffer zone. It should be up to the Ukrainians. But to the extent that we can get that, and it's supported by the French and the British, to have this peacekeeping force, I think that's a good concept.
Sure.
It'll be very difficult for Russia to launch through 60,000 European troops without any consequence, because they essentially be going to war with us, right?
Right.
Or with them. I don't know if they'll go as NATO, so I'm not sure the legalities of Article 5. If they just go as French, as Brits, as Poles. The other question, which just popped up, is apparently, according to reports, the president's been talking about this, is a willingness to send U.S. Contractors, so veterans. So capability-wise, if they're veterans and they're screened, they should have the capability. Right?
Sure.
It's not like you get stupid when you leave the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. You know how this could work. If they pick the right veterans, then the capability could be there. And as long as they're still capable, right, they pass, whatever test they need to do to prove that they're still capable. And then the question I would have is the U.S. paying for it?
Right.
If the U.S. is paying for it, then yes, they're not technically armed forces, but they are a U.S. entity, right? So it might be a way around saying no U.S. boots on the ground, but it still directly involves the U.S. government in boots on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Just because they're Americans.
And likely at a decent sized number, right? Like it's not going to be like 800 guys.
I haven't seen any number attached to it, but it could potentially be the U.S. contribution to this force, which I'm not necessarily against. I guess it's a way to get around, like the president not putting active U.S. forces in harm's way. But if it's not paid by the U.S., if it's paid by something else, then
this seems insane.
I guess we have to hear more details.
Yeah, because like what happens? Let's say we do send like 20,000 contractors, 10,000 contractors, right?
That's expensive.
Yeah, and finding them, right? Because like obviously the contracting world, it's still around, but it's not as robust as it was 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, as like the GWAT was going on and Iraq was going on, right? So you have to like hire these guys. I'm not saying that's not it's achievable, but it's not going to be like tomorrow. Um, and what happens if you have like a even 1,500 contractors on a base somewhere in Ukraine and they get hit by artillery? Like they don't have support for them, I would think, because they're
Well,
contractors. They're not like
well,
81st
yeah,
Airborne, 82nd Airborne guys
right. Or 101st.
or
I had to say
100.
that because my
Yeah,
son's in them.
right on.
So the U.S. did say that we would provide air support
Okay.
and ISR and intelligence analysis, etc. So under your scenario, if it's 1,500 former U.S. military contracted by the U.S. government, which makes us responsible for, right?
Right.
It's if you're essentially employed by the U.S. government, then I think we would respond to that, of course, and have an obligation to.
Right.
It's just I just don't know from the reports I've seen, and maybe there's more details that I'm unaware of, is whether this is something like Ukraine's going to pay for. If they could do that now. They don't need to. They don't need the U.S. to talk
Right.
about it. They could just do it. Um, there's some discussions in Ukraine, and they already have like an international regiment, but they could expand that and make it more substantial. Like the French
Yeah.
Foreign Legion kind of concept, because either way, and do it now, not necessarily wait till there's a ceasefire. Because to your point, D, there's nothing that Russia's doing that indicates they're going toward a ceasefire.
No.
And
No. They're
there's
still
nothing that we're
bombing.
doing
Yeah.
that's pushing them that way, right? So it's secondary sanctions. Sanctions don't really help because we don't trade with Russia. So with sanctions, it's not that severe. But secondary sanctions, excuse me,
Bless you.
thank you. Secondary sanctions would have more an effect because it's on countries that purchase the energy.
Yeah.
Right? And they're probably talking about that to tie into our first topic
For sure.
Right now.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do if the Sanctioning Russia Act passes the Senate, right, which is well over the veto? It's 85. You need 60. I assume it would become law. What are they going to do? They're probably talking about it right now. Russia, China, and India. And Turkey, right? Those are the three big ones.
Yeah.
The three big ones are all in Shanghai right now.
Man. And I don't think it seems like Russia's moving whatsoever on anything. I think they're just buying time and, trying to, I don't know, run the clock. I don't know what the fuck their deal is. Like, they're not going to get, they're obviously clearly, even without U.S. support, they're not going to get Kyiv. It's not going to happen.
They just keep trying to take more terrain, so he can try to justify to his people, although he doesn't seem to care that much, of why they did this and why they lost 1 million people either dead or seriously injured. And there's no end in sight, right? There's no end in sight.
No.
He's just throwing them at it, right? I mean, there was one battle, and they've taken some terrain where it was like 55,000 Russians against 14,000 Ukrainians, and they're just chewing them up.
Yeah.
And it's clear that, President Putin does not care about an entire generation of young Russian men.
Yeah.
They are just getting annihilated. They're taking some terrain. It's slow.
Sure.
But,
Man. I mean, there's no way they would go, even if it wasn't a NATO, quote unquote, under the NATO banner, where they would go for like UK, French, Pole, German troops in Ukraine. No way.
Which makes it even less likely they'd accept the ceasefire.
Right.
So unless there's consequences, like real consequences, when they start losing, right, that's when they're going to go, okay, ceasefire, right? Because then they start losing terrain. The only way we're going to get there is we start cutting off their funding for the war, and we start increasing Ukraine's capacity to be on the offensive. And there's over $300 billion in frozen Russian assets that can go to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Have we kind of like lightened up the restrictions on them being able to use ATACMS and HIMARS into more Russian territory, or no, we're still kind of
I believe, if I'm correct, the Pentagon has released some of this, or relieved some of the restrictions, which is a good thing. And they approved a lot of sales recently, 800 million, I believe. Also a good thing, and important to point that out. The U.S. needs to be a good ally to Ukraine. We need to continue our support, and it is in everybody's interest to bring this conflict to an end. And the only way we're going to do that is convince Putin he needs to bring this conflict to an end. I know we have to convince Ukraine. They didn't want it to start in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
So um, it really need to focus all of our efforts, Europe and the United States, on convincing Putin to enter into a permanent ceasefire.
Yeah. Hopefully it happens. Okay. Moving on to Israel-Gaza. Um, Airdrops have stopped. It seems like the Gaza City occupation plan is like kind of in full effect, and they're starting to build up. We spoke last week about like they called up 60,000 reservists. They're keeping another 20,000 that were supposed to cycle out still there. Um, Hamas did accept the ceasefire proposal from June, I believe. Haven't really heard much about that since then. Um, what are you tracking there? Clearly, like if the airdrops and like more than likely they're not sending trucks in either, has pretty much stopped. People are beginning to starve once again. Um, we've talked about it too. Like, why would they be doing this? Some population control to get people out of Gaza City and more to the south and stuff like that. And I get it, but maybe not use malnutrition as the move, and starvation as the move. Famine was declared. Spoke about that. What are you tracking there? What's the latest?
So there's around 6,000 trucks ready to go into Gaza, full of food. Um, right now, there's, as you mentioned, about 500,000 people are in IPC 5. That's the final phase of food insecurity. So it is starvation. It's labeled as catastrophic. There's about 1.1 million people, getting close to the entire population, but 1.1 million people that are in IPC 4, right, which is serious of itself. So it does look, and you're right, apparently Hamas accepted an agreement from June, and it doesn't look like the Israelis are interested in it. Much to the chagrin of a lot of the Israeli population.
Yeah.
We've seen protests the whole time, and now we're seeing pretty substantial protests.
I think one
So
was
there's
500,000 people.
Yeah, that's a lot to consider the size of the Israeli
10 million.
population. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a controversial inside of Israel, both the population and the IDF, right? So IDF's been pretty vocal all the way to the top about not wanting to see this happen. But it looks like it's going to happen. All that said, it looks like it's going to happen. The preparatory fires have been going on in many neighborhoods in Gaza City. Tens of thousands, I believe, have already left. They want them to go to south. That's the only place where the food is being distributed. So they likely will go south. Like you said, the airdrops have cut off. So there's nothing going into the north now. So it's going to move a lot of the population. And there's around 900,000 civilians in Gaza City. So this is going to be a huge move to another location. And it's going to cause even more strain on the system as it is. Now, if they allowed all these trucks to come in, if they allowed traditional organizations that know how to run distribution points to come back in, it could mitigate this somewhat. But
Yeah.
right now this is going. And then, this is going to be a multi-dimensional fight. I don't know how many Hamas fighters are left. One's too many, but the belief is they're probably concentrated in Gaza City. So this is going to be a Fallujah type intensity. And it's going to be any civilian that's there is likely going to get caught in the crossfire. So I hope they do leave for their own good, because this is going to be super bloody and on both sides. And it's going to put more pressure on the Netanyahu government to come up with an end state that isn't just continuously fighting. Not just from the international community, which of course are getting a lot of pressure now, but internally.
Yeah.
As the IDF soldiers, they've been fighting for so long, are getting killed or injured. So this is where it's headed, unfortunately, and it does not look like any efforts by the United States, Egypt, or Qatar, or anyone else have an impact to get a ceasefire.
Yeah, brutal. Axios also reported that Israel has a plan to try and occupy about 60% of the West Bank, and they were trying to gear up to do that during Trump 1.0, and Trump 1.0 said no bueno, and they didn't do it. Um, there's still no response from the Trump administration as of yet for that plan. Um, and they said this is Israel's doing this in response to like a lot of the European nations coming out and saying that there needs to be a Palestinian two-state. And like, for the most part, a lot of Western countries, nations have been pretty vocal in terms of like what's going on in Israel and how it's a genocide, and the starving people is not great. So we'll
Yeah,
wait.
and on that note, D, there's also this controversy, if you will, of the Palestinian Authority not going to be allowed to go to the UN General Assembly at the end of September or September,
Yeah.
right? So
Why?
that's the U.S. is going to deny them visas
Jesus
to come.
Christ. So who do we
So
talk
that's
to? If we're not talking to Hamas, like, and we can't deal with Hamas, and who are we going to talk to if not the Palestinian Authority? What other group is there?
yeah, it's unfortunate there is no other group. The Palestinian Authority is Palestinian, but they have no authority,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Essentially, they haven't, they're just there. They're viewed by the Palestinians as corrupt, ineffective, incompetent, and they probably are. And so they need to. I don't know how you would come up during, obviously conflict in Gaza and the current turmoil in the West Bank with them selecting another, but there needs to be an effort to do that. Maybe our Gulf partners can help, come up with a technocratic based government that could be at least popular with the Palestinian people. I don't know how you would do an actual election, but this is apparently a pushback because of all the European countries that are going to recognize Palestine as a state, and then you're going to have UNGA. So it's. I don't know if this has been done before. U.S. usually doesn't block. This
We
isn't a
let
country.
everybody come too, right? We let
Well,
Iran
we let
come. Yeah.
Iran, Russia, all our traditional because they're a nation state. So I don't know if like France can have them as a guest
But
or
question, like perennially, has the Palestinian Authority been allowed to come to the United Nations General
I think
Assembly?
so. I think this is the first time they've been blocked. I might be wrong about that, but if this is common, then I don't think we'd be making such a big deal about it.
Sure.
But this is an issue, and the further we get, like you said, D, the occupation of the West Bank, 60%, obviously the complete destruction of Gaza, this idea that they're going to create this Riviera type thing, it's getting further and further away from any chance of a two-state solution. It's almost like a
Right.
throwaway line now, whether even if you support it, I do, but it's getting further and further away from ever having a chance to become a reality,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Man, oh man. I just hope
Horrible
people.
decision by Hamas, man.
Yeah.
Horrible
I
decision
just
by
hope they get
Hamas
food, man. Like they just
for
stop.
many reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, to be honest. Hamas.
To me, it indicate not only completely depraved what they did on October 7th, and let's just go past that, but if you just look at it from the Palestinian cause, they destroyed it. They
Yeah.
destroyed literally Gaza, and they've destroyed a lot of opportunities that they would have had to diplomatically end with a country of their own. It's just a fact. So
Yeah. Do you
the
think they
people that
would?
wave the Hamas flag and Hezbollah flag,
No. Yeah. It's
actually, not only are they
madness.
supporting a terrorist organization and depraved murder, rape, kidnapping, but they're counter to the what I would consider anybody's view of what is in the interest of the Palestinian people.
Right. Right.
Period.
What's interesting too is like you have protesters here that do that. It's like, if you went to Gaza and try to pull that off, you're probably getting fucking kidnapped. You're not
Well,
allowed.
yeah,
You have
they don't
no
have
freedoms whatsoever.
Hamas doesn't support free speech.
Right.
They certainly don't. You see yeah. I mean, things that are accepted in the West aren't accepted there at all, and they wouldn't be allowed to last for a day. This idea that you've seen all the kind of craziness on these campuses where people clearly don't understand what Hamas is. if they're
Right.
advocating for
Well, listen, a lot of folks, especially kids, young kids who are like more lefty, they're very much, I'm more liberal, right? But this is kind of where I diverge with them is like they're very much anti Western, whatever the US does. It's like imperialist and stuff like that. I'll criticize the US, but like I'm not that. Like I'm not going to show love to Hamas or China, which a lot of folks do on that side. Like China's a horrible fucking dictatorship, soup to
totally
nuts. They might not be communist anymore, which I know we hated,
right, but they're
but
still
like,
totalitarian.
yeah,
You
bro,
have
yeah,
zero civil rights over there. All the
exactly,
stuff they enjoy over here to say shit,
right.
uh, they wouldn't even have there.
No,
So they're advocating for something that essentially is against their own ability
sure,
to express their opinion, which you should always have in the United States. That's a democracy.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, so that's kind of where I diverge in terms of like, because life and like reality on the ground and how things actually work are very different than these like broad ideals of like peace and everyone being together and all that shit. Like the reality, people need to be a little bit more pragmatic in terms of like, I'm not taking a side or anything. I think starvation's terrible. I think terrorism is terrible. Like you can have these views and still like, I just don't get it. Their baseline foundational view is like America bad. Whatever America does is bad. And I'm not saying we're not fucking perfect at all, right? Our foreign policy at all. And we should be able to be criticized about it. But again, it's like you compare it to like the other countries out there, Russia, China. It's like Iran. It's like, dude, I know we suck sometimes for sure, but we're the best that's possibly out there. Like, let's be
yeah,
honest. Like,
yeah,
so that's kind of where
totally.
I diverge, like the tankies.
What's a tanky?
That's like a person who's left, far left, who like hates anything America does, even though you live in America and are probably, upper middle class and stuff like that. They hate everything that like American imperialism does, right? Where we overreach and stuff like that. And they take it to the point of like, glossing over what China does with Uyghurs or glossing over what China does with Tibet and things like that. They'll talk about the Tibet stuff and then they'll be like, oh yeah, but the Dalai Lama was like kissing a boy. Like they always kind of try and like, which is weird in and of itself. But again, like Tibet's been fucking oppressed forever. Uh, and the
They got like a
Uyghurs,
million Uyghurs in prison.
yeah. And
Yeah.
they try and do that. And that's why they go hardcore with like Hamas, Hezbollah, like
Think about the logic. So they support Hamas and then they support China,
it's,
who imprisons people based on being Muslim,
yeah, it's
right?
mad. It makes no sense. The
Uh,
logic isn't there, but it's the foundational thought of them, of their like their base of thought is just America bad, Western ideals or like Western imperialism is bad. That's like their main thought, and it's like I feel you, and I'll criticize America when they fuck up, right?
well,
Iraq,
that's American.
yeah, put your fuck, yeah, exactly. You're able to do this in America because we have freedom of speech. And even if I don't agree with you or I disagree with you on things, you could still protest, do it peacefully, and try and be heard, right? Like that's what makes America, for lack of a better term, great, right? Uh, so yeah, that's kind of super where I diverge. Like even when like the Ukraine war started popping off, a lot of them were like very, very like no way it's gonna happen. And a ton of people said that. Like even analysts were saying that. Like it wasn't gonna the invasion wasn't gonna happen. But when it did, it was like, yeah, they don't really talk about it as like hardcore as they'll talk about like Israel and Hamas, which I understand. Like I don't agree with it Israel's doing with it, obviously. But you have to look at things pragmatically. It's not just black and white. Things are extremely complicated and nuanced when it comes to like foreign policy. And you can't just pick a side like, oh, XYZ is bad and that's it. I'm not going to hear what they have to say. I'm not going to, negotiate with them. It's like, who are you going to go negotiate with then? Right? Like,
Truism is about the ability to change one's mind, right?
yeah,
It isn't just knowing things. It's about the ability
totally.
to hear facts and change your position. If you're just dogmatic and you're just a propagandist where it doesn't matter what the facts are and you're just going to, then you're not an independent thinker. You're basically just a puppet for these totalitarian governments around the world.
Yeah.
A useful puppet because you're
Right.
in the United States.
Right. And you have a megaphone and you can say whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, and authoritarianism is getting worse, right? We're getting less. Countries are sliding down the democracy scale
Hmm.
and individual rights and civil liberties, and some falling off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an entire conversation in and of itself. Like the root cause of that, like where did that come from? I think it's just people being complacent and like apathetic to like their lives. We're pretty pacified in terms of like not just a nation, but like the world, like the Western world and stuff like that. All right, so back to the what's cooking. I'm glad I taught you something about tankies
Yeah,
this
that's a
week.
new one to me.
Yeah, that's what they're called generally, tankies.
All right.
Um, oh, so Israel also smoked the Houthi prime minister last night. And a bunch of his there was a few
So
people
this
that
whole cabinet
yeah
practically,
got
right?
clipped. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, and it was pretty precision strike. I think it was like a meeting. Um, no, I don't think any main like generals or military people, but I'm sure they're probably on the target list as well. And again, this is what Israel does well, I think, is precision strikes with good intelligence, which I think they should be probably trying to do in Gaza. Just decapitate the top, and let them squirm, let them reconstitute, and then kill those guys again. Whoever comes out of the vacuum.
I hope we assisted with intel, but they obviously had very good intel. That is the absolute linchpin for having these solid decapitation strikes. These terrorist leaders. So good on them. Well done. We'll see what impact it has, but that doesn't mean you don't do it, right? You
Sure,
still do it and hope it has
sure.
a big impact.
Yeah, and the Houthis have been shooting missiles and rockets and missiles and drones towards Israel over the last few months and stuff.
And
Yeah,
striking commercial
they
ships.
sank two in
There's
July.
just civilians, right?
Yeah,
They sank. That's a definition of terrorism.
sure.
So shooting at unarmed civilians on a commercial vessel
Mm.
that have nothing to do with nothing, killing them, sinking their ship, that's terrorism. By every definition, I think, at least every definition I have. So this is what they get.
Yeah. So as usual, there's a lot happening. There's going to be more happening next week, I'm sure. I got to make a T-shirt, a lot cooking, because there is always a lot. It seems like there's always a lot cooking. Is there anything I missed? Anything you want to touch on that I missed?
Oh, I think we were going to touch a little bit about the deployment to
Yes.
the coast of Venezuela. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure people have been. I've seen it online like everywhere, and there's some big YouTubers that have talked about it, and like their videos have exploded, which I was surprised about. But we have moved like a handful of. I think we have a MEU down there, a handful of destroyers, all surrounding Venezuela. Venezuela, obviously,
Nuclear submarine.
a nuclear submarine.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Venezuela run by Nicolas Maduro, who in some eyes is a narco terrorist, which I kind of agree with. I mean, his last election is highly disputed across the world in terms of like
Stolen.
how. Yeah, exactly. So what's happening there? What are you looking at there?
So I've talked to several people about this who, start bringing up the Bay of Pigs and all this. It's important to bring up, the U.S., every administration uses a projection of force for political reasons all the time. Do it in the Indo-Pacific, especially. We did it. We do it in the Middle East. We did it under this administration, last administration. So let's not overblow it, right?
Sure.
I don't think there's any chance we're going to launch this Marine Expeditionary Unit.
We're gonna need more than 2,200 Marines. God bless them to take over Venezuela.
Yeah, maybe 23. So I'm just kidding. I don't think there's any real chance that's not the point, right? So let's not overblow it, make it into something it's not. They are a narco state. Apparently, the military is very participatory in that effort, not just the gangs, right?
Yeah.
Because this person's horrible leadership in governance, think 7 million people have fled the country. And where are they going? United States. So there's a drug problem. There's a mass migration problem. There's destabilization in the region, right? They have issues with their neighbors. And of course, there's always they call the Freedom of Navigation Ops, FNOPS. That's how you pronounce that acronym. There's always that effort, right? So it's key. It's a key waterway, and it's all tied to transport of drugs. Although I think most actually come from the Pacific to the United States. But either way, this is supposed to send a message. I'm certainly not opposed to it. But to be countered, or at least to show the other side, is sometimes you do this stuff, you actually get the people to rally around the flag, right? So we think we're going to show force and it's going to start an uprising and they overthrow Maduro. And there's a $50 million reward for his arrest. But we think it's going to do that. It's a potential could do the opposite, right? And I think you're seeing people sign up for the army, and I don't know how much that's really happening. So that's the flip side. Is this really going to help us get him out of power, or is it actually going to inspire people to say, "Oh, well, I don't like the government, but
to rally."
I don't know. We'd have to see the facts on that, but I don't think you should expect much either way in that regard.
Yeah,
it's important for us to show that we care about, quite frankly, the Western Hemisphere. We don't do this as often in our own turf, and so, yeah, that's where we are with that.
Did you see Russia saying, "Oh, they were going to send long-range missile launchers or whatever to Venezuela"? It's like Russia can't help itself, but like try and act like they're fucking tough. They can't even take over a country that's neighbor to them. Like, let's stop acting like you're this fucking big, tough country that can project power everywhere. You can't. Clearly.
Well, if they do it, I hope that tells us how they're not the new Russia that we think they are.
Right.
They are the same old Russia. And if they send any weapon systems, especially advanced weapon systems, to a person like Maduro, there you go.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. So we'll keep tracking that too. Like you said, I do believe it's kind of like you said, it's more like, what do you call it?
Gunboat diplomacy.
Bingo. Yeah. That was the word. That was perfect. That was exactly the term I was looking for. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on everything as we do. Mick, always a pleasure. Guys, don't forget to check out Lobo, Fogbo, all the Mick's organizations. All the links are down in the description as well. If you're listening to us on audio, don't forget to like and 5-star and subscribe there. That's important. And YouTube as well, like and subscribe. And the best place to support the show, patreon.com/theteamhouse. As always, Mick, a pleasure. Thanks, man.
Talking to you.
Happy Labor Day to everybody.
Happy Labor Day, everybody.
Hey guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, KIT, Kilo India Tango.com /join.